Okay, here we are again. Welcome back, everybody. This is the We Quit Booze Brothers, which is a podcast where we try to have honest, no fluff conversations about our various experiences of quitting alcohol. Haven't been drinking, honest. And with me, as always, is my brother Matt. Hello, Matt.
Good evening. Yes, as you can see, it's not rehearsed. We do get it wrong sometimes, but we are back indeed. And it's, as you'll notice, it's nice and light. So the clocks have gone forward here in Europe. So what time are we now? We're now 6:45 in the evening, and it's still light. So that makes a big difference. We were just saying how much nicer it is when the weather turns. So probably not a bad way to introduce the subject, actually, because the topic we wanted to talk about, I'm just going to introduce it because why not, is surviving the first week sober. So I'm pretty sure, and jump in, Mark, if I'm wrong, but this was a comment that one of our listeners left about how to deal with that first week. And you know what? One of the things I think is getting outside. But I'm going to go into that in more detail. So hence my thoughts on why it's good to have nice weather, because that sort of thing helps. But I'm going to throw it back to you, and I've probably put you off course now. But anyway.
No, you're absolutely fine. You're absolutely fine. And apologies if there's any background noise. I've got two dogs with me, one of whom is fast asleep, Rosie, and she is snoring quite loudly. You probably can't hear it, but I can. It's quite a pleasant sound, actually. She sounds like she's really having a lovely sleep. But anyway, digress. So, yeah, it was a comment that one of the listeners left, and it's an interesting one because I think when you quit alcohol, there are just a bunch of milestones that people can typically talk about. People talk about 1 year no beer is a statement. Dry January. People talk about your last month. But I actually think one of the most significant milestones, and certainly I remember it being the case for me, is a full week, the first full week. And I'm talking, Monday to Monday. So a week that includes a weekend. And if I go back to my example, when I first quit was back in January 2017. And and I was absolutely at that stage where I was fucking sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I was fed up with the brain fog. I was fed up with the feeling like I had no energy. Every Monday was a slog, every week was a slog, all the things that we've talked about relentlessly. And I was so ready. And I think that is really one of my first points, which isn't maybe a particularly tactical point, but you do sort of have to be up for it. You do have to be, at that stage where you're just like, do you know what? I'm ready to stop. And I think whenever you say yes to anything in life, you're normally saying no to something else. So what I mean by that is if you say yes to alcohol, yes, I'm going to carry on drinking, you're saying no to a life of all the other benefits. You're saying no to clarity, you're saying no to more energy, you're saying no to better sleep, better health, you're saying no to less anxiety. So the point is, it's all about making a decision ultimately, but the decision has to be really based in that feeling that you're ready to quit. Now I was at that stage. I was just sick of it. No one needed to tell me anymore. I was going to quit. But I didn't make it through the first weekend. It was tough. I remember getting to that Saturday and I just said to my wife, I'm gonna have a glass of wine. This is shit. I'm just not gonna do this. And I didn't. So I think maybe that's a point to sort of also put across, is that it doesn't matter if you try and you fail. The fact is you tried and you failed. But then the next Monday I was like, okay, that is it. I was disappointed in myself, felt ashamed that I couldn't make it through the week, And the first weekend of my full sobriety, I've told this story before, so I won't go into any detail, but I was living in the United States at the time. I was volunteering and working with a large not-for-profit youth soccer program, and that weekend we had sign-ups. In those days you could still do it manually. We weren't quite online at that stage, so we set up a big thing in the local mall, and people would come and sign up and they'd try on their shirt sizes. And I had that whole weekend of being involved in that and not drinking, and I'm sure this is something you're going to bring up, Max. read your book, obviously, and I know it's in your thing. But being busy that weekend really, really helped me. Having something to do really helped me. And I remember the Sunday walking into the mall at, sort of 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, feeling fresh, released from and I just had this sense that this was it now, that there was almost an overwhelming feeling of excitement and joy. And there was just a really big part of me that thought, I think that's it now. I'm free of this shit. Like, I don't, and I remember thinking, imagine what this weekend would have been like if I'd have been drinking. Sort of leaning back from parents because I didn't want them to smell the alcohol on my breath. How could I possibly be, the sort of representative of a youth soccer program hungover, which I would have been. And I just remember feeling so relieved that I was free from that I didn't have to apologise to myself or, to other people. So what is my point in all this? The first point that I want to make is you've got to be ready for it. Read the books, read Matt's book, Man Gets Sober. If you're a woman, it's just as relevant. Doesn't, Matt will tell you it's just a title because he happens to be a man most of the time. And another great book that I read was the Alan Carr Easy Way to, I think it's Control Alcohol, which is somewhat paradoxical because actually, I don't want to give the game away too much, but it will teach you how to quit. I read that really helped. I also did it during that period. So my point to start with is be ready, be convinced that this is what you want to do. And I've got a few more things to say on it, but I'll hand over to you, Max. I know you've done quite a lot of thinking on this and you've written about it as well. And remind yourself that you're really not giving up anything, what you're doing, and do it every day. Every day of that week, listen to some content, listen to us, listen to other content that's out there. Remind yourself of all the benefits: the better sleep, the loss of weight, the better energy, the lack of anxiety, the improvements to your physical health, the improvements to your mental health. There's such a fantastic and incredible world out there that's available to you when you don't drink. You just need to remind yourself of that every day. So I'm going to stop there. I'll hand over to you, mate, and I'll pick it up after you've said your bit.
Yeah, so my day one was actually hungover. So, people who are familiar with this channel, who know me, are aware that I had a rock bottom moment. I'm not going to go through that today, but by all means, look back on our previous catalogue of videos and you'll find it. I go into pretty deep detail around it, but I felt shit like day one. But I'd had this moment of clarity, I think is the best way to describe it, and filled with self-loathing and hatred as well. So, I don't know how you'd explain that, but that's exactly what it was. So when I woke up that morning, I knew the night before that the game was over. For me, it'd gone too far. Things had to change. So, and I've mentioned this before, I just knew I had to keep occupied. I knew I had to keep busy. And for me, it was about planning that. It was about, well, okay, right, I'm not drinking anymore. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with my free time? What am I going to do in the evening? What am I going to do now that I am not going to be touching alcohol? And I wrote out morning, afternoon, evening. And by morning, obviously, I was going to work as well. So what I meant by morning was I would get up and I would have a coffee and I would watch Kevin O'Hara, another YouTuber, really great, does some fantastic stuff on alcohol. I also used to watch, and now his name has completely escaped me, but you get the point. So, do that work in the morning, and that was sort of the first thing I did. Then obviously there'd be work, and that would not involve any alcohol. And then it was the evening. What am I going to do when I come home? It could be something simple like I will cook the dinner tonight and I will watch a film or a series with the children. It could be I will play board games. But I also wrote down in my notes, and I think this is important, which is do what you need to do. And what I mean by that is, one of the things I felt that I had to do was to get some pleasure as well out of giving up alcohol, because it shouldn't be a horrendous period. There has to be some pleasure there. And one of the things that I like, and I've always liked, is going to the cinema. So I went out and I got myself a pass for the cinema, unlimited pass. I think it was like 35 euros a month, something like that. And pretty much every other night I would go to the cinema. And I told my wife this. I said, you know, I need to just be busy. I need to be occupied. I need to work on this. So, you know, I also liked exercise, so I started putting work into that. And, you know, you really have to just work at it. You know, as a guy who I don't really follow, I can't, he appears on my Facebook. I sort of watched him a bit. His name is Sean Whalen. He is a gun-totting American, probably, you know, not, I don't know whether you'd like him or hate him. He's a very divisive character, but the guy's done well. He's in great shape, etc. And I remember a long time ago when I was looking at the stuff he did, and he always talked about this, you know, do the work. You've got to do the work. Nothing comes really for free in this life. And I believe that with sobriety. You've got to put something in to get something out. So, you know, that's super key. And of course, the obvious ones, I think, just really, you know, don't go to parties, don't go to bars. You don't have to accept invitations. I made that very clear. I made it very public with my close family, particularly my wife. In fact, the sort of A4 bit of paper with what I was going to be doing each day was actually stuck on the wardrobe door. It was there for everybody to see. And if anybody asked me why, my kids, or if anyone had come round or whatever and happened to see it, I was happy to explain. So yeah, I'll hand back, but really it's, you know, do the work, make sure you get something for you, make sure that, think about those things that you enjoy. Everybody enjoys things when they're not drinking. When people drink, there are periods when they're sober. It just is the case, and there'll always be something you like. So try and hone in, focus on those things.
Yeah, I think, you know, to summarise, the key to the first week is be ready for it, be up for it. Matt, you had your rock bottom moment. I was just sick of it. You know, I was just knew that it was the time. Plan. Don't take it by, you know, don't take it for jump. Make sure you put in a, you know, morning, afternoon and evening plan, and it's a really great way to live your life anyway. Actually, be purposeful about the week. Book things in. I think the third point I would add is do the stuff you like. You know, all bets are off now. If you like, you know, don't worry about what you're eating. You know, have a takeaway. If you like Chinese takeaway, go and treat yourself to a Chinese takeaway. Treat yourself to a night at the movie. You know, you love movies, going to the movies. I also started doing that more often. One of the things that will happen to you when you quit alcohol is you'll get a sugar craving. It happened to Matt and I. For me, it's lasted about 10 years.
Me too.
It is my current only vice, you know, but it's one that, you know, lingers. Look, in that first week, you know, go eat the candy, eat the chocolate bars, watch the trashy movies that you enjoy, get the takeaways, go for the long walks, take time off work, you know, cheat your way through that week on everything else other than the alcohol. And I think final point really in all of this, because we will continue to talk about these topics, but one of the things I was thinking about today, I was out walking the dogs, thinking about this podcast, and a slightly random but aligned thought came into my head, which is when you drink alcohol, you live in this kind of virtual reality. And what I mean by that is that nothing is quite really as it seems. You are in a virtual reality because you're drunk, because you're not, yeah, you're in a different world. This sort of, you know, the point of being drunk is that reality becomes distorted. I think when you're not drunk, you're tired. You know, I used to get real brain fog and the brain fog led to anxiety for me because I wasn't sharp, because my speed of thought was compromised, because I wasn't able to articulate particularly, you know, with much clarity. And so you create this world of virtual reality. You know, it's just not real. It's you're either living under the fog of the recovery from the night before, or you're in the night before. In which case you're drunk, you've had too much to drink, and you know you're not really where you are. When you get sober, you live in reality. It's pure, clean, unimpeded reality, and that in itself is a bit of a journey. And what you start to do once you live in this world of sobriety is you start to rediscover the person you really are. And that's an incredible piece of work for anybody to do, being authentic and starting to do the work that allows you to become the best possible version of yourself. That starts when you quit. That's what's on offer. And you know, we've talked about all the benefits of this. For me, the list is never ending. You know, time I get back, the money that I've, saved, the energy I've got, the weight that I lost, the mental health, the physical health, the improvements to my business, did things with my business that I just would never have been able to do if I carried on drinking. My life changed in every way. The relationship I've got with my wife, just incredibly good, and it wasn't that bad before, but yeah, there were times when it was strained because of my drinking, because I never did anything particularly awful, but I just did it a lot, and it was tiresome for her. So my final thought on this is, and I hope this helps, is that the eureka moment always is not that you're stopping and giving something up. It's that you're actually gaining the world. You're gaining everything, and it's the quicker you get to that realization, the better. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. But I was always so much more to say, but I'm trying to stay on point.
Yeah, no, it's the topic. You could just go on and on. I think another thing I want to say, and this is going to sound, I'm going to try and make it not sound too shit, but
it's definitely going to sound.
It is, isn't it? No, just get out and look up. I always say to people, look, because you don't look up when you're in that cycle of drinking, going out, just living day to day, not really living for the future, not looking at, you don't look at things in the same way. And I genuinely mean, like, you'll find yourself, even in the first week, it can be in the first week so easily. Get up. If you wake up at 4 a.m, if you wake up at 6 a.m, and you can't get back to sleep and you're thinking, what shall I do? Go for a walk. Everybody in this world lives somewhere where there's something maybe nice to see. There's a park, there's a view, there's a river, whatever it might be. Go and stand there. Go and walk along that riverbank. Go and walk along that street that you like. Go and walk in that park that you love at 8, 9, whatever it is in the morning. Go and run there if you prefer running. And just look up and look at the things you've missed, because there's so much to see. And it's a really, really beautiful thing. And I'm very fortunate where I live in Paris, and I run quite a lot, and every time I run I always go on a route, and I get to see a bit of the Eiffel Tower from a distance, but a little bit, and it just makes me smile. Every time I see it, it just makes me smile, because I think I always see that, I notice that it's important to me, and other things, and you'll be amazed at just how incredible the world is early morning. And that just wasn't part of my life, really. It really wasn't. It all changed when I stopped, and really one of the greatest things from giving up.
Yeah, nothing gets in your way when you quit drinking, so that's what's on offer. So cool. All right, well look, we'll leave it there. Thanks ever so much if you got this far. We always really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody that leaves comments, feedback. It's absolutely fantastic. It's sort of the oxygen that keeps this thing going, really. So look, we appreciate all of that. But yeah, unless there's anything else, Matt.
If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. If you're not new to the channel, please like. And whoever you are, we hope you get something out of this. It's why we do it. We're very small. We don't have lots of people watch us, but we don't care. We just really enjoy. We love your comments. You know, we keep saying that because it is true. We base a lot of our material on that. So without you folks, we would, we'd kind of be nothing, talking to ourselves. But hey, that's good too.
Exactly. Brilliant. Okie dokie. Well, great stuff. So thanks again. As I always say, never quit quitting. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him. Till the next time. Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye.